I've been riding motorcycles all around the world for the last couple decades, and one thing I know is that motorcycles are dangerous. If you're going to be riding in a tight pack formation like motorcycle clubs do, there are some essential things you need to know. Whether you're in the city, whether you're in the country, or whether you're just trying to let the other riders know what's happening with you or what they need to do, there are some basics I want to share with you. So we stopped by the Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada Disciple Christian Motorcycle Clubhouse, where the bar is painted like a road, to talk about pack riding essentials.
I'm James Disciple Johnson, and I believe in old school values. I started the world's largest Christian motorcycle club, and together with my queen Amy, I've been called to travel around the world, starting Christian biker churches and discipling men to have a daily word and prayer time and to return to the old school values of honor, respect, loyalty, chivalry, and love. This is my life, these are my friends, and this is Old School Values.
Years ago, I joked in Saskatchewan, Canada, there's only one curve. And when the guys in Disciple Christian Motorcycle Club Saskatchewan got their clubhouse and it was curved, they thought they should paint a road on it, even painting the cracks like the tar snakes. And this is a perfect place to reshoot my old pack riding essentials video. So let's jump into what makes a good pack.
Well, guys, I'm here at the Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada Clubhouse, also a Disciples Way Christian coffee house. And you can see we're having a lot of fun hanging out today at the clubhouse with Disciple Gripper, our international road captain, and Canada boss, Ben Tykerobe, and some snow, which is outside. So we'll leave it outside. I like that.
Over the last 30 years, I've learned a lot about riding motorcycles in a pack that I want to share with you. Or as we like to say, pack riding essentials. When you're riding motorcycles in a tight formation with a bunch of other people, you need to have a lot of good communication. So let's talk about what it looks like to ride a motorcycle in a pack. A pack is typically defined as more than 4 motorcycles, and you'll be riding in a side-by-side formation. It looks like what you're seeing right now on camera. And what you do when you're in a pack formation is that you're riding 2 bikes side by side within the same lane of traffic. And the reason we do that is, of course, building brotherhood, and it's a lot of fun. It gets you close to the guys that you're riding with. You get to build a lot of camaraderie with them on the road. And communication becomes essential to make sure that you don't all run into each other. So we're going to talk about pack riding communication today. Now, when you're riding in a pack, you need to have a standardized set of signals that everybody's using. And that communication needs to be large so that everybody can see it, from the front motorcycle all the way back to the guy in the back, and even any chase vehicles that are running along with the pack of motorcycles. When we talk about large communication, we're talking about all the communication that you know about. And those signals look like this right here. So when I make a signal, I need to make the right signal every time. So I like to use my fist instead of my whole hand or fingers. This means single file. Some people, when they want to make a right hand turn signal, they do this, and they're really signaling single file. We've got to make sure that we're signaling the signal we mean and not some other signal. Large communication, hey, slow down, everybody slow down. Large communication that everybody can see, but making sure that I'm sticking with that, not something that could be interpreted as a turn. Large communication is passed all the way down the pack. So when I make that signal up at the front, everybody down the pack should be making that signal all the way to the last bike so that even the chase vehicle can see it. We want everybody to know if we're turning. We don't want them running into the back of our motorcycle. We use hand signals because, hey, you know, your turn signal could be burnt out and the guy behind you doesn't get a chance to know that you're turning until you slam on your brakes and turn. So hand signals that are large, that are well seen, that everybody can see you make, all the way to the back of the pack, repeated by even the last motorcycle. That's the kind of communication that keeps us from tangling up with other bikes. That kind of communication needs to be made by the guys at the front of the pack, and it needs to be passed all the way back, and it needs to be given well in advance of where you're planning on turning, etc. At the front of the pack, you may know that you're going to turn somewhere very quickly, but of course the people riding at the back of the pack may not have that same awareness. They may have their old lady on the back. Their bike may not be as maneuverable as yours is. Make large communication well in advance of where you're planning on turning. Now in Disciple, we like to make our motions down the middle of the pack. And the reason for that is if I'm riding this front left bike and I'm making a right-hand turn signal over here the legal and proper way, will the guy next to me see that signal? Probably not. So we like to signal, hey man, I'm turning right here, so that he can see that as well, signaling to the inner side of the pack. So this guy is making a signal that this guy can see. Now this guy, of course, would make the normal and proper turn signal to the right. And there's a legal reason for that. When we talk about where signals came from, it came from out the window of your car. And so it was considered that the left hand is the way to make it. And so we're signaling that same signal, but we're saying, hey, I'm turning right. You can make it with your left hand if you want, but also communicate it to the guy on your right. Hey, we're turning this direction, bro. Hey, I'm about to turn. You want to make sure that he sees that signal and it's not just here. And then we pass that down to the middle of the pack. So if I'm signaling to the right side, this is what it would look like when I'm with somebody else. So if Gripper and I are riding next to each other and I make a right-hand turn signal, I'm telling him over here that we're turning right, he's probably not gonna see that. But now if I tell him, hey man, we're turning right up here and I'm pointing this way, he knows we're turning right because he can see it and he's gonna put his hand up too. So I'm signaling to the middle of the pack from the left-hand side and he's signaling to the middle of the pack from the right-hand side. This is the proper legal version, this one. But also, hey, doing this, that's a courtesy to let the guy next to me know so he doesn't hit me. Makes sense, right?
Yep.
One of the things that I use to make signaling to the middle of the pack easy for me is a throttle lock. A throttle lock is just something you can click down. It allows your throttle to lock where it's at. You can buy it for $20 on Amazon. You can signal with your right hand and then click it back up. And it gives you the time, if you're coming into a turn or something like that, to be able to signal to people next to you. And so having a throttle lock is an important part, in my opinion, of signaling, especially if you're riding on the left-hand side of the pack. Not so necessary if you're riding on the right-hand side of the pack. So what are the standardized communications that we use? Well, that's pretty simple. If we're making a right turn, we do this. We also might do it to the inside of the pack by pointing to the right on the inside of the pack. Left turn, same thing. Some people will do both. I like to signal to the inside of the pack, so that's why we do that sort of backward signal. We're communicating. We also have a slow down, so that's slow down. Make that one nice and big so people see it, slow down. We also have the ones that tell us whether we're going to be bar to bar or single file. And so bar to bar, it's very simple. We're going to put it on our helmet. So we're letting people know this differentiates from being out here that we're turning. This is on our helmet, bar to bar. Then there's staggered. So staggered means that the right-hand side bike is going to fall back and it'll be one bike going past a given point at a time, staggered. And then of course single file, we'll put that on our helmet again because some people again are making these turn signals like this with one finger. Don't do that. Make your turn signals with a fist or a whole hand. Don't do this because this is single file. So we put that on our helmet so everybody can see that one. Of course, we may use our foot, left or right foot, to point at an obstruction or pothole or dead mouse in the road or what have you. So you just put your foot off your foot peg and point at it, or you can drop a finger to point at it as well. If you're riding ahead of me and your signal is on, I'm probably going to be doing this at you to tell you that your signal is on. Sometimes people leave their turn signal on, so if you see somebody doing this, they're probably trying to advise you that you're riding along like a little old lady in Florida.
The, of course, most important one for motorcycle clubs to know is this one. We shouldn't tell anybody what this means, but you can put it in the comments if you want. This one means there's an obstruction or a reason to slow down, or a law enforcement officer. Oops, did I say that? And of course, we can point at our tank if we are out of fuel. So pointing at your tank means that you need fuel, or to pee, or to get something to drink so you can pee later. And of course, the turnaround, I screwed up. I'm the guy at the front. It's time to turn around. We all made a mistake. Let's single file out and get ready to turn around.
Now, there are times where a pack of motorcycles is using a blocker. And a blocker is somebody who comes up, passes the pack of motorcycles, goes to the next intersection, and holds the intersection open so that everybody can pass through. And of course, the blocker ends up behind the pack again, and while they're coming back up to their position toward the front of the pack, will often signal for a single file. And the reason we do that is we want our blockers to be able to shoot up the middle. And so what happens in single file is all the bikes fall into line, single file, so that blockers can make it back up to the front. If you ever hear that we're gonna have blockers in the pack, be watching for that single file. All directions come from the front of the pack. So follow those directions. If they're announcing single file, get in single file so that the blockers can make it back up. Don't fall back into double formation by yourself as soon as the first blocker goes by. There may be other blockers. Wait for the front of the pack to signal that the blockers are in position and everybody can go back to two-up riding, handlebar to handlebar. Now, as we talk about the bike next to you, we call those a rank, a military term perhaps. So you got the first level of bikes, that's the first rank of bikes, the second rank of bikes, the second level, third rank of bikes. We're not talking about rank as in the club, as in the president rides in the front, the prospect rides in the back. We're talking about how they are formed through the pack. And sometimes there are things that happen that make the pack kind of fall apart or be less safe because people are not staying where they're supposed to be. So let's talk about how we keep the pack how it's supposed to be. First of all, if you're the president or you're the senior officer or you're the person riding at the front left-hand side, you're the one that sets the pace, you're the one that communicates the signals, or the bike next to you, maybe a road captain, and you're the one who is responsible to make sure that the pack is safe. So if you're a president, if you're a leader, remember this. Keep at least 3 seconds off the vehicles ahead of you. You never know when some car is going to slam on its brakes right ahead of the pack and decide to wait to turn left, and you're going to run a whole pack of motorcycles in the back end of some car. I know you tailgate and speed and get right up on people's ass when you're riding by yourself, but don't do it when you have a pack of motorcycles behind you. My rule is 100 yards or 3 seconds. I leave plenty of space, too much space, absolutely all the space necessary, because there might be some bro in the back of the pack that doesn't have very good brakes, and he has his old lady on the back, and she may be, well, anyway, the bike may not stop as quickly as you want it to. And yes, you'll stop at the front of the pack, but you're responsible for the lives of the men all the way to the back of the pack behind you. So counting 3 seconds, in other words, hey, that vehicle just passed this yellow line, and so I'm going to count 3 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 before my front tire passes that same yellow line. That's the kind of way that you can estimate and give yourself plenty of space so that if somebody up ahead of you slams on their brakes, you don't run a pack of motorcycles into the back of them. The front left bike always is setting the pace, setting the agenda. So when it comes to speed, when it comes to being side by side. But if this bike happens to fall back a little bit and is staggered instead of being right up next to him, and he decides to fall back a little bit, the next guys in line, the next rank, they're the ones that need to make sure that they fix that. So you stay next to the bike that is left of you. That means even if you're back here all the way at the back of the pack, the left-hand bike is still setting the speed for the bike to the right of it. And so even if there's some staggering or seesawing going on in the pack and bikes ahead of you because people don't know how to stay next to themselves or whatever, fix that at your rank by staying where you're supposed to be with the bike ahead of you. So it's always your goal in the pack to stay as close to the bike ahead of you as possible, and of course right next to the bike next to you. So if the bike next to you starts to fall back, there may be a problem. They may need to go to the back of the pack or something, or they need to move forward, and that's always going to be that left-hand bike that sets that distance and space. Try to ride as close to the bike ahead of you as possible, and of course if you're on that right-hand side, you're going to stay next to the bike that's to your left. But that's the primary importance, is to stay next to the bike that's next to you in rank. Now I want to talk for a second about staggering and curves. As you go into curves, places like in the mountains, places like a freeway off-ramp, something like that, you always want to stagger. The right-hand bike will always want to stagger back from the bike next to it. And so what that looks like is like this. As we go into a curve, this bike's going to move forward a little bit, and this bike next to it's going to fall back just a little bit, and they're going to stagger in the curve. And of course, this guy will catch right back up next to him as they come out of the curve. But you always want to stagger back. And why is that? Well, it's simple. The bike on the left needs some space to maneuver on that yellow line. Let's just imagine for a second that a truck comes and it's crossing the line on a curve. This bike at the front of the pack needs space to be able to get over. And so if there's somebody right next to him, he's not going to be able to do that. And so sometimes cars come around a curve with their tire over their yellow line where they're not supposed to be. Make sure that you're giving space for the bike on the left to be able to move over. That's why we stagger in curves, so that if there's a pothole or some obstruction or a vehicle that's crossed the yellow line, that the lead bike can move over to the far side of his lane. And then of course, as you come out of the curve and you straighten back out, then that right-hand side bike can go ahead and catch up and be next to or handlebar to handlebar instead of staggered. What curves do we do this on? All curves.
I think there are places where it's automatically appropriate to stagger a pack of motorcycles. And again, we're talking about a pack. When you're riding with people that may not have the same level of skill, don't assume that they can ride just like you can, side by side through curves. Appropriate places to stagger are on small, 2-lane or 1-lane roads, places where there's curves. When it's raining, I think it's completely appropriate to stagger out a pack to give people the safety and space they need to maneuver in unusual conditions. Yep, we ride in the snow sometimes. Yep, we ride in the rain sometimes. Those are times to go ahead and stagger the pack out a little bit so that everybody has space to maneuver in their lanes. Now, when you're riding side by side in a side-by-side handlebar to handlebar formation, there's a couple things to think about. First of all, don't ride on the middle of your lane. I know that sometimes we'll do that just to have fun. We'll get as close to the bike next to us as possible, and that's fun. But generally, when you're riding, you want to be as far to the outside. You want to almost be touching your yellow line, and the guy on the other side also almost wants to be touching his white line, so that there's as much space as possible in the middle of the pack, in the middle of the road, and people have space to maneuver. If there's a pothole or something, this bike might need to move slightly to the center, and then they come up a little further, there might be a squirrel that's lying dead in the road, and this guy might need to move to the center. Ride as far to the outside of your lane as possible, giving people space to maneuver. Now, sometimes it can happen that you lose a bike in the pack. Let's just say that the second rank left-hand side bike falls to the back of the pack for some reason. Remember that you need to fill that gap. And so the bike behind them needs to move up in rank, and then every single bike behind them will need to move up so the pack stays side by side. So fill in a missing bike hole that exists by simply moving up and re-shifting or reorganizing the rest of the pack. That kind of stuff happens. If there are blockers and they leave their position and they go and block, then we'll leave their hole open so the blockers can then come back up the pack later on and go right back where they belong. Blockers obviously are typically going to ride toward the front of the pack, behind the president, and be available to block an intersection, fall to the back, catch back up to their spot, and that's where we would leave an open bike space. And that goes for everybody in the pack. Stay in your position. The sergeants at arms and enforcers ride in the back because they're looking for people to be out of line, not do their job, and of course, let them know later that they didn't do their job. Another thing you'd certainly never do, you'd never run up the side of your pack unless you're authorized so to do, to tell the president he ought to go faster or whatever. You stay back in your position. Stay where you're supposed to be. Stay in your position in the ride. And that's important because, the guys in front are watching to see, is everything happening properly? Is everything safe? And so as we leave plenty of space in the middle of the pack, the guy at the front of the pack is able to see what's happening. He's able to see the chase vehicles in the back. He's able to see what's going on. And that's, of course, what we're looking out for. The shepherds in the front should be looking out for the rest of the pack. Now, one thing that's very important is that the boss is riding in the front. Don't pass the boss. And what do we mean by that? If you are designated to be the person who's riding next to the boss, that may be the vice president, that may be the road captain who knows where we're going, that may be some prospect from that town that knows the right way to get there and he's put in the front. If you're advising the front bike on how to ride, where to ride, and what the route is, you don't do that by passing the front bike, riding way ahead of the front bike, and that way you'll be able to turn before the rest of the pack. No. You stay back in your rank where you're supposed to be, next to the left-hand bike. The left-hand bike is the bike that leads. And so the way you tell the boss where to turn is with communication. Large, obvious communication
in advance of where you're supposed to be. Hey boss, up there in 1 mile straight ahead, we're gonna turn right. And so you're gonna advise him and tell him by communicating, not by riding your bike up ahead of the pack. Trust me, I will turn into some parking lot and let you go down the road, and you will be able to figure out that you don't pass the boss. You ride right next to the boss. You ride right next to the people that are you're next to in the pack. You don't ride ahead of them, you ride next to them. If this guy slows down, you slow down. If you want him to slow down, you wave to him to slow down. But the left-hand bike is the one that's leading the pack. And if they make a mistake, well, then they'll have to be told to turn around the pack, because that's another motion, turn around. But you communicate by hand in advance. Hey boss, we're going straight through this light, 1 mile, and then we'll turn right. And that way you let them know, hey, we're gonna turn right up ahead, slow down. And this guy's gotta be watching what you're doing next to it. This is very important. If you're designated to lead the pack next to the left-hand side bike, you are not leading the pack. This guy is still leading the pack. You're just telling him and communicating to him where to go, so he knows what parking lot to turn into. So make sure that you allow the senior person to lead the pack, and don't try to do it yourself by running way out ahead of everybody else. Now, it's always important to say what I don't mean by that. I don't mean that this bike has to stay, back, from the president because he can't pass the president 2 inches ahead of him. The bike should stay right next to the president, not way out in front, not way behind, not slightly behind, right next to him. Side by side. Do a side by side dance. Side by side. One signal we haven't covered is the automatic wave at the other bikes that go past. I like to throw a hand out and wave at everybody that goes past, even if they're on a sport bike, sometimes if they're on a scooter. I know that some clubs don't believe in waving at other people, but I think it's appropriate to throw a hand out and give the universal sign of, hey, what's up, other bikers, by waving a hand. Certainly very appropriate, I think. Now, what happens when you're riding a motorcycle by yourself and you're just randomly cruising through the roads on a orange Harley Davidson, and you come up on another pack of motorcycles? What's the proper etiquette? Well, it's very simple. Usually you'll fall in behind them and wave at whoever is in control of their pack from the back. So there may be a sergeant at arms or a road captain or a tail gunner at the back of the pack. And I think it's important to let them know, hey, you guys are going a little slower than I want. Wave at them, let them know you're going ahead. Wait till it's appropriate and there's plenty of space. And then, of course, you can pass them on by and wave hello to them as you do so. But you usually want to communicate that with their pack so that they know what you're doing. The same thing goes for a pack of 1%ers. If you come up on them, you are probably not going to be passing them. They'll probably be passing you. But the appropriate thing to do is to wave at them. If you come up on a single 1%er riding by himself down the road, you don't just want to whiz past him. You might pull up next to him, wave at him, let him know that you're there, that you see him, show your respect. And then, of course, you can wave and move on past. Or they may advise you to fall in with their pack, who knows. But if you see another pack of motorcycles, it's certainly not the proper thing to do to just blow on past them and let them know that you're going to go faster than them. It's always good to communicate with them and let them know that you're there, wave, say hello, whatever it may be, and then, of course, move on. I think it's important to be professional about how you park your motorcycles when you're in a parking lot. And so one thing I always have proposed, and that we do in our club, is when there's a gas pump in this. So if you pull up to the gas pump, don't just pull your motorcycle up next to the gas pump and take up an entire gas pump all by yourself. You've got 40 bikes pulling into a parking lot, and then there's only 6 gas pumps. You're going to take them all up for an hour. So one thing we like to do is when you pull your bike up to a gas pump, you'll pull up and you'll leave some space and you'll park, and then another bike might park next to you, and then a third bike might park next to them, and you might even get a fourth bike coming around and parks on this side and gets in there. And that way you can fuel up 4 bikes at one gas pump instead of taking up the whole gas station for 4 bikes. And that shows respect and courtesy to others, but it also allows you to pay for the fuel for a brother who might not have had the money to make the run. And this is something we think is important. We want your brotherhood, not your money. For God's sake, come on the run. Somebody will have some money to throw in your gas tank, and next time you can be the guy that throws some money in the gas tank. And if it's a long run, this guy might pay this time, and this guy might pay the next time, and this guy might pay the next time. Everybody gets a chance to pay for fuel, but that brother that doesn't have money for the weekend also gets a chance to get some fuel, and we don't take up the whole gas station and annoy the general public. Which, obviously, we like to do that, right? The same thing goes for how we park in a parking lot. So when we roll into a parking lot, we don't want to haphazardly take up the whole parking lot. We're going to park our bikes side by side in a nice orderly row, as tight as possible. And very often, when I'm pulling into a parking lot, I'm looking to swing as wide as possible and pull up to the front of a parking space so that another row of bikes can come and park behind me in that same parking space. You can fit 4 bikes into one parking space if you do it this way. And so having a double rank of bikes takes up as little as space as possible and leaves space for other patrons of the restaurant or wherever you may be hanging out to be able to pull in. So very often you'll see me, and I absolutely detest backing my motorcycle up to back into a spot anyway. I'm always looking for a spot where I can just pull in, pull forward, and leave space for people to park behind me. Of course, as much as possible, as you're parking, you want to retain the formation of bike and order, of importance, of full patches and prospects at the back and such, so that as you pull out of the parking lot, you can fall right back into formation as you were, not have to line up in the street or whatever. Now, of course, at the extreme rear of the pack is the chase vehicle. That might be the bro whose bike is down. It might be his old lady who's driving. It might be somebody who's just pulling a trailer in case a bike goes down. It might be somebody who's there just to have a vehicle at the back of the pack, and so that's important to have. Very often there'll be medical supplies, a trailer, what have you, so that that vehicle can help with any problems that happen as we're riding. Chase vehicles need to know a couple things. First of all, chase vehicles, you are part of the pack. Blockers, it's best to keep on blocking intersections until the chase vehicle has gone through as well. Chase vehicles, good idea for you to turn on your 4-ways or hazards lights so that all 4 of your blinkers are blinking so that people know that you're with the pack of motorcycles. Also, if you're in the chase vehicle, stay as close to the pack as possible. Don't fall off behind unless, of course, you're following on GPS and catching up to us at the next light, whatever. But chase vehicles, consider yourself part of the pack. Go right through the red lights with all the bikes that are going through at the tail of the end of the pack. Stay there. Be willing to block traffic. So if there is an accident, you can use your vehicle to block traffic. You can use your vehicle to kind of block the road as the bikes are moving into a parking lot or what have you. Chase vehicles are an important part of what's going on in the motorcycle pack. What's up, y'all? It's James Disciple with other people. Why are you moving? Stop. If I'm going to be turning my motorcycle to the right, kink, cut that bit. One of the things that I like to use to give me the freedom to make these signals down the middle of the pack. Cut that, kink. But otherwise, typically, we're going to always fill any minute. Stay up, for God's sake. Cut that bit, kink.
Little thing of Purell hand sanitizer. Puretto by Purell. Hand sanitizer. Kink, cut that bit. Are we getting paid for it? Oh, we're not. Right.
Oh, don't run into the back. Oops. Cut that bit.
All right, that's all of them.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you see all the awesome free content we put out by rotating your device and clicking the red icon to follow our channel. God bless you. Thanks for watching.